Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on tournament management. My name is Colin Westwood, and I will be taking you through today's scorecards and other printed materials. And so let's get started. So right now I'm at my customer center. This is where you should go whenever you log into tournament management. We're going to go to our webinar category, and we're going to use the multi-day tournament that we worked on last week just to kind of use this as the base for our scorecards and reports. Alright, so we're now in our event dashboard. We're going to go to rounds, and we'll just use round 3 here to kind of start off. Now, as you can see, even though everything is checked and technically the round is complete, we can still do scorecards and test everything out. So we're going to go to print scorecards here in the middle. Sometimes it takes a minute to load. Alright, so whenever we go to print scorecards, it'll always ask us which tournament we want to use. This allows the system to define the parameters for the scorecard. So if we go to user defined, this means that basically all the options are open. And if we select like our one person event or our 2-person net or gross, it kind of again defines on what level we're going to be looking at for the scorecard. So a lot of times if we choose a 1-person event, it's not going to give us the option to show teams because as far as it's concerned, there are no teams. But right now we're just going to use user defined and kind of go through each of these steps and show you the things you can do with this and some of the nice things you can do with the scorecard. This is one area of TM that it really excels in scorecard creation and just all the different things you can do with them. So in this first area under pairing groups, we have our categories up here. This shows us all the different groups that we have in our tournament, along with the tee times, tees are playing, general pairing groups. Over here are the check marks to denote who we want to print a scorecard for. So we can always unselect and just print one, or select all and print all of them. So I always have the option, as you see down here, we also have the ability to print a scorecard with no names for emergency use. Always something useful. Alright, so let's say we're printing a scorecard for everybody. Now we're going to go into format. So this is the general layout of the scorecard. As you see, we can go have our options of 18 hole. We can even go 9 hole card. As you see, it reduces the down on our little preview. Have the option for a general 9 or maybe a specific front or a specific back hole 9. So we're going to go with our 18 hole card. Paper size, US letter, landscape or portrait. Almost everybody's going to be using landscape because that is how the scorecards from the USGA are designed to be used. But if you ever have something special, you do have the option to change it as well as a custom size. Excuse me. Margins here. For the most part, leaving these at 0 is just fine. But you'll find that with different printers and just how the different printers deal with margins, you might want to modify these a little bit. Maybe give yourself a little more room on one side or another. Scorecards per page. We have the option of 1, 2, and 3. In most cases, 2 is what you're going to need because, again, that's what works best for the ones from the USGA with the perforation in the middle. Have the ability for the vertical fold space in the middle, meaning right here. That's just kind of standard. It has that on. The ability to print blinds on the cards. So if you're using blinds in your tournament, you can print them or not. Alright, so now since this was a user-defined tournament, it kind of defaults to showing every player. As you see here, it doesn't give me the option to select every pair, foursome, or team, or show both players and teams. It just allows me to do every player. And so we can also, and to get these options, what we would have to do is, let's say you wanted those and you realize you don't have them. We would go back to our pairing groups, select our tournament, and let's say we're going to use our 2-person net event. Go back to formatting. And now we have the option to show both players and teams. So we're going to do 1 team per scorecard. The reason it doesn't allow for this all teams per scorecard is because what it realizes is if it were to put 3 more lines on here for the other 2 people and the Nets team, there wouldn't be enough room to go 2 scorecards per page. But you could go down to like 1, and sometimes if it thinks there's enough room, it'll give you the option. In this case, it's just due to the fact that we're doing both players and teams. If we had the option to do every team, it would be different. Again, these options are determined based off of what type of tournament you're running. So a scramble event, since we don't actually have players, we just have 1 team line, would show up a little different here. And we can actually show that here in a minute. Let's go to that now. So we're going to just jump here for a minute and go to our round 4, which was our scramble event. Go to scorecards. So I just want to show you how this kind of modifies based off of what tournament you're playing in. Going to use our scramble net. Save that one. Alright. So now our format, since we're playing a scramble, we have the ability to just show every team. So it says 1 team line because 4-person scramble. If it was a 2-person scramble, it would show the 2 different lines. So as you can see, and then we also have the ability to show both players and teams. So we'd have all 4 players with the team score. So just wanted to show you that real quick, how these options do modify based off of the tournament you choose to look at. So let's go back to our round 3 that we're working on. Oh, wrong button. There we go. So this, sorry, I skipped over this last time. But this error box will come up if you've been on a page and you've modified something, and then you choose to move off that page. So it'd say, hey, you did modify it. Do you want to not save save that entry, or just move on? Right now, I just want to move on because I wasn't doing anything important. I just wanted to show you that difference. All right, go back to our 2-person net and go back to our formatting. Okay, so we're going to stick with show both players and teams. And we'll show 1 team per scorecard. Okay. Next up is we have our headers, which is this information up here above the scorecard. We can choose the number of lines we want, and then we can choose the number of elements in the line, meaning this line here. So we can either have 1 big line or split it into 2 small ones. The standard is 2 lines with 2 big ones and then 4 small ones. Alright, these little buttons on the sides here, the blue things on either side of boxes, those are to justify the information inside of it. So if you want it left justified or right justified. You can't center it, just justify it left or right. Alright, the information inside of the boxes can be changed to most anything you want, really. So anytime you see this where it has a percent, the information in percent, that means that it's pulling this information from somewhere else in the event. So if we click on here, we see here we have all these different options of information to put in, specific to the lead or round, specific to individual players, and so forth. So now one of the things you need to be careful with is, so let's say here we want player 1 name, and here we want player 2 name. These players are set up by places in the pairings group. So if we wanted to have all 4 people's names appear, we'd have to make sure to do player 1, player 2, player 3, and player 4. You can't just have player 1 and have the name appear for who's ever down here. The player numbers actually designate their position in the pairing group. And we also have these other options: round name, round date, course name. A bunch of different things you can put in here based on what you want. You also have the option to just type what you'd like in here. So we have our lead name here and our flight name. Let's say we're not using flights and we just want to type in, welcome to USGA TM Club. And so now, since we don't have these parentheses or these percent signs, this information will appear on every scorecard just as you typed it. All right. So this is general formatting. The next process in creating our scorecard is handicap stroking. So this allows you to print dots and total course handicap over here. The other option you do have, again, these options here under handicap stroking modify based off of what tournament that you're using for the scorecard. And one of the options that can also appear is under certain net events, it'll actually allow you to show the person's standard course handicap and their adjusted one if you had made adjustments based on the tournament to handicapping, such as you're only taking 80% of the handicap, or you're using 3-5 and that reduced them by 5 strokes, or something like that. You have the ability to have their total course handicap with a slash and then their final one. But again, these options vary based off of what type of tournament we're using. So under additional info and T's, we have the ability to put in slashes if we want. Column for initials, so this area here, we can get rid of this if we don't want it. If we're using a shotgun, we can have it automatically highlight the starting hole with a certain color that we choose. If you want, you can even set up pace of play and course details and have that information appear. This is a nice thing that they've added more recently, so if we had an event where people are playing up to 4 different sets of tees, rather than having all 4 sets of tees appear on every scorecard, it only has the tee that the specific people on that scorecard are playing. So Chris and Connor are both playing white, so only white will appear. But let's say that we were playing white, blue, black, and red. Rather than having all 4 of those on here, if Chris and Logan are still both only playing white, then only white would appear. It's a nice little handy thing it does. We also have the ability to add optional rows. So down here, it'll add a row for us that we can type anything we want in here and just leave these other boxes empty. So let's just call this total, or we'll just call it test for now. So we have something. I want to show you some options you have in this later. On to logos. So logo option, this is our logo right here. As you see, it's the Golf Genius logo. We can go another logo and change that to the one we want, and we can set the size here. One of the things you have to be careful with in sizing is if you make the logo too large, you won't be able to fit 2 scorecards on one page. So you have to make sure it's the right size. You also have the ability to do watermarks, which gets rid of the logo down here and adds it back here. So we can increase the size of it, and then we can even do the opacity, so that way it kind of hides it, and we can even shift it. The reason it's not shifting is because of the size. So if we move the size down, and we can kind of shift it around a little bit. Advanced logo options, they give you the ability to do a few other things, but for the most part, you don't really need these. You can do like a watermark and the logo down here, but standard, let's go with the watermark. Always trying to like that look. Alright. And you always have the ability to go no logo also. But with change logo, we do have the ability to set up different ones in here. And this is one thing that if you wanted to have two different logos on your scorecard, that's where you might use advanced logo options. Fonts and colors. This is where we really get to make the scorecard our own and do a lot of different things with it. So, for example, let's say we want our headers to be Helvetica. We can bold them and also increase the font size. Let's say 14. Let's say we think these are all just a little too small. We can increase the size of them. Let's say to 10. And down here, we can change our row height. So we give people a little more room to write in to 20. Kind of spaces out a bit more. And these are all different things that we can play with. So we have the general text look. We also have coloring. So let's say we want to highlight par. We can make all the par lettering be blue, and let's bold those also. Now, one of the other games that, for example, like the home course plays is a sets event where you play sets from the blue, sets from the white, sets from the red, or we play it, sets as a best ball, sets as a scramble, sets as a Callaway. A great way to identify that is to highlight them. So we click on these individual cells, and as you can see, they are highlighting. And all I'm doing is clicking on them. You don't have to hold shift or anything like that. And then we will change the background color to orange. Oh, and the reason this keeps changing is because I have those checked. we will fix those in a second. But now as you can see, this is a pretty bright orange. So again, we can use this opacity to reduce how bright that is to kind of hide it in the background. Now we unclick those to get off of that. Now let's change these back to no background color and bold those also. Alright. Now we move on to our next ones. And we can set a different color for these. And let's say purple. That's text color. We want our background to be purple. There we go. Make it a little duller. And finally, our last set holes. We will make green. Oh, come on. There we go. Now the reason I did this is because I forgot to click off of my other ones. There we go. It's a little hard to tell when the colors change in here, but there's little tiny blue lines around the boxes that show you what's highlighted, and sometimes it can be kind of hard to see, especially when you start changing the colors to purples and blues. But they are there nonetheless. And then let's change our total columns to yellow, and we'll keep them nice and bright. So these are some of the options that we can do with scorecards just to make them livelier or even help people designate what's happening in those certain holes. We also we have some other options here to apply default T colors. What this does is if you have set for under event and course details, we can actually set a default color for a tee. So let's say this happens to be white, so it won't really work. But if it was a black tee, and we could actually use this to apply the default tee color so that that line would be black with white lettering. That's just kind of a default. It won't work here because it's white, so default is kind of white. There is also the option for, let's say, our test group here. One of the things I wanted to show you is we will turn off our background. And let's just unselect these. Alright. Alright. Check all, uncheck all allows you to select everything and modify that if you wanted to. But that's not what I want. There's one thing, you can also merge these cells. There we go. So in this, I forgot to show you this back here, but in additional info and T's, for our additional lines that we can add, we can actually put cells together by clicking on one, holding shift and clicking the other, and it will add them together. So if we wanted a line down here, so we could actually add these and type in here best ball. And for these ones, we just go scramble. Oh, spelled it wrong over here. There we go. And then finally over here, we could put in, oh, come on. There we go. Oh, so these are different things that we can do in these cells to try to help people remember what they're supposed to do in them. All fun little things to do with your scorecards if you want to take the time with it. One final thing is this preview down here that we've been working off of, for the most part, it is going to be correct with how it prints out, but there are little differences. So it's always good before you go to printing to hit this final preview box, and what this will do is it'll load up exactly how it's going to look. So as you can see here, this top line went away on us, and that's because I increased the size of this box here, and it pushed this box down into that one, removing that line. So if I were to reduce that and give it more room, then that line would come back. But as you can see in this one, it looks fine. So just one of those things to remember when you're doing this, is that the preview is kind of like your final. This is what you want to look at before you go to printing, so you're not disappointed with something. And it even got rid of our lines in there. So I had some issue with this one. Down here they look fine. So this is something that can happen every now and then. So to fix this, we would have to test out what's going on with it. And well, let's take a look at how it would print out. So we're going to go save and print in the bottom right. It will load our document. Sometimes this can take a little bit. Alright, download it in a PDF, and we have the ability to print. And as you can see here, these lines all of a sudden came back. So even the preview is not always correct. That's an issue, but something to remember. So I think I've mentioned this before, but my favorite way to print scorecards is once we have it in a PDF that we are now viewing in Mozilla Firefox in our web browser, rather than printing it right from here, I like to actually download it, download the PDF, open it in Adobe PDF Reader, and then print it. You have more options with printing and the ability to do some things that make the printing come out cleaner. So I always recommend doing that. Actually using this download button, downloading it as Adobe Acrobat, saving the file, and then once it's done, opening it. Let's go to my downloads. Let's just open it. Alright, so now we have it in Adobe Acrobat, and in my opinion, you have a lot more options in this print menu than you do in the Mozilla one, which looks like this. So, those are scorecards. So now we're going to move on to reporting. To get out
Colin,
of
this
here,
is Kevin.
yeah.
I would briefly mention the library for people who want to make fancy scorecards and come back to them.
Absolutely. Thanks for reminding me. So what Kevin talking about here is, so we spent this time on the scorecard with the coloring and some text changing. So what we can do is actually save this in a library, and we can call it a scorecard. Save it, and then anytime we want, we can come here to load from library, and we have a template already ready for us. So if we, let's say we're in round 4, under scorecards, and rather than select, we will select our tournament, but then we will load from library our template. And it will load up what we had in there. Give it a minute. There we go. And just, there we go. So it looks a little different here just because of the additional people, but that is a great way to always save these scorecards, is with the library down here. And we always have the ability to manage the library, and these are scorecards that I think we either put in or were automatically in there. Yeah, so these system ones or ones that have been developed by Golf Genius and added in there for you. So let's say they already even have a sits pair event that we could preview and look at and see how theirs compares to the one that we just made. Let it load. And as you can see here, it's pretty basic, but it allows you some places to enter formatting and a little different look to it, but it's an option. Alright, so this is a scorecard library. So we can always, as you can see, we can delete the ones that we made, but not the ones that they made. Alright, so now we need to go back to our customer center, get out of the scorecard library, and go back to our webinar and week 3 multi-day. Alright, so now we're under round 3 again, and we're going to go to rounds and then to download and print center. So as I've kind of shown you over the past few weeks, there are little areas in event division flights and teams and pairings where you can print, where they have the ability to print those right away, but all of those reports are housed in this download and print center. One thing to know is they are going to be updating this coming the end of the month, so we will probably be doing an update to this once we get that and get familiarized with it. We will update you guys with any changes they made. I'm not 100% positive on everything that's coming out, but one of the things they are doing that should be very nice is they're doing an association-wide library, or Golf Genius wide. So what it allows you to do is actually share your reports with other clubs. So if you create a custom report that other people really like, you have the ability to share that with them. So these are the general reports that are already developed and are kind of their main ones. T-sheets, players, and then others with scorecards. It has this option to print scorecards. If you click on it, it just takes you back to where we just were, just so you know. We also have cart signs, proximity markers, and hole location sheets. So let's just try to look at some of these. We'll start with a T-sheet, kind of our generic one. So we have the ability to show handicaps for people. Now the reason there are so many options is because each tournament that we have, we set up their own handicap options for that individual tournament. So let's go with our generic net one person, and we'll also show the full player course handicap, so that way they can see both. We have the ability to print custom fields, so if we had team IDs or gender, things like here we want to enter, we have that ability. Page orientation, landscape or portrait. We'll go with portrait. We'll go top down. Just do large font, make it easier to read. We can enter in an optional message if we would like. And then we will save and print. Document will process. Then we have the ability to download it in PDF or DOC. DOC format is a Word format. So you would have the ability to download it to Word and then modify it if you'd like. So now here's the look of our generic T-sheet. I have our title, or our event title at the top with the round number, or the round. This would show up as round name if we had a specific name for the round. Date of play, what tee we're playing, and then individual players. And as you can see here, we have their handicap, not only their total, but then what they would receive for that individual tournament. Alright, so we will close this and go back. And we will go back to our download and print center. Alright, as you can see, we also have the ability to email the T-sheet from here. And we can also create an alpha list with very similar options to handicap options, additional information for cumulative scores. If we already have scores in there, we did actually have it come out with scores. And we can also do a combined alpha and T-sheet. I'm not going to show each one of these just because they're all pretty simple. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory what they show, but they are there for you. We can print out the division flights or teams reports, team handicap report, and then we also print our leaderboard, which we've kind of talked about before. Now we haven't gone over these before, is the scoreboards. So if we want to actually have something that we can post and write in people's scores as they come up, the TM does have the ability to print them. So we can add a scoreboard. So over here, we did a preview of what we're looking at. Now, Not everyone I know does scoreboards because not everyone has a large printer enough to handle these. The Golf Genius program TM does allow you to print them in letter size, so they're not really large or anything, but if you wanted to, you could do it. So when it says name here, this is just the name of the scoreboard. So we will just call this round 3. Our header, we will stay at event name. We won't have a subheader. We have a couple options for fonts, but not many. Which tournament we want this for. Let's do this with a 2-person net. So now it changed it up. The number of score boxes over here is what I was talking about. So over here we just want a total net score for the 2-person teams. So we will just change that to 1. Alright, and now down here we have some options. So we will show team name instead, since these are 2-person teams. If we had affiliation, we could use that, but we're not going to. Capitalize. Let's go ahead and do that. We don't have photos, so we're not going to use photos. And then general formatting of how the player name looks. Rows per page, always good just to leave it auto, so that way it can just fill it up for you. But you do have the option to change it if you want. You can put some labels in here, and under stores, we can split the store bots for gross and net. Those are for rows, but we don't have those. Then we can even add some color to it. So we can change our header. Names will be in blue, and then the borders will be red. So, little fun things you can do. I'll show you how this will print out. So now again, these are really made for people that have large printers or plotters, but I will show you how you can do it if you just have a normal printer. Alright, we'll download this to a PDF, and so I'm going to download this here so I can show you in Adobe, but this is a look of it, and if we were to go to print, now, so this is set as an 8.5 by 11, so for a scoreboard they're kind of small, but you can always change the size of them. And one of the things that Adobe has ability to is if we were to print out a larger one, we could actually create this as a poster, and it would slice it up and tile it so that we could then tape it together, so you could create a large scoreboard out of something smaller. And just some options that you have available. Cancel that, and we'll close Adobe. Alright, let's go back to our print center. Alright, so that's a generic scoreboard. So we will go back to our print center. We do have the ability right here for Microsoft Publisher scoreboards. So if you guys are really serious about scoreboards and want to make them look nice and professional, this is probably the way to go. You need Microsoft Publisher to do it, but they have these folders here where if let's go to 2-person team, and these are set up scoreboards that they have created, and what you can do is you can download these and then modify them to how you want. So as you can see here, some of these say legal or letter, and that's what size they are for pages, but these ones that don't have anything, these are the ones that are designed for the large plotters and bid devices. And just quickly for anyone who might be wanting to do this, how it works is when you download it, you'll say what tournament you want it to use for. Let's just say we'll use that one. And then you have 2 options here. You have download spreadsheet and download MS Publisher template. So how this works is you download the Publisher template, and that's where you modify the look of the scoreboard. But you also have to have the spreadsheet, and those 2 files are linked together. So the publisher template will look at the spreadsheet to fill in the data. So it's a little tricky to use, but if you want to take the time, this is definitely what you'd want to do to create those unique and signature scoreboards. Okay, go back to our download and print center. All right, I wanted to go over some of these other options here, such as chart signs, because I know a lot of people use these. So these are pretty generic. We'll go one chart sign per, we'll go 2 chart signs per page. No reason to waste paper. And we can sort through players. So if we don't want to use everybody, we can select certain people. And let's just print. And I'll show you what their generic one looks like. And then after this, we will go into making like a custom chart sign. Just download the PDF. Alright, so this is their generic chart sign. The logo we can modify once we set our default logo. We have the course that we're playing, the event, and just general information. So if this works for you, great, but we'll go into here how to do a different one. Let's go back to our download and print center. Okay, the composers are what we're looking at. So there are a couple different options: report, page, and spreadsheet. Spreadsheet Composer works with these down here. These all export to Excel. So if you want to actually be able to edit the data easier and sort through stuff, we can always export T-sheets, rounds, leaderboards, even scoreboards. So everything can be exported to Excel if you prefer that format. We're going to look at our report composer. And in both report and page composers, they're very similar. So for the most part, in reports, you're going to be doing most everything. The page composer has, I think, the cart signs in it, but reports are where you can also find scoreboards and T-sheets. But what I want to show you is there's 2 different categories here. There's layouts and reports. Now, I've made this mistake before, so just wanted to make sure you know it. Where it says add new layout, all this is doing is talking about how the page is set up. If you want it a letter, legal size, if you want number of columns, and so this is a general formatting for the page. Down here under reports and add new report, this is where you would actually set up your specific report with the different things that you want on it. So let's find the chart sign in here. Actually, no, sorry. Chart sign is under page report. Go to our page composer. Okay. Now here we have the chart sign. So what we can do is we can actually copy this. Looks like I've already done it, but we will copy it in. So what this did is just create an additional one for us, so that way we don't mess up the one that's already there. So this is the page and report composer. While they have 2 different names, they look pretty much identical. The page composer is more meant for things like chart signs and, for lack of a better term, things that use just a generic page rather than a report where you need set information for T-sheets or alpha lists or things like that. So these numbering systems, as you can see here, it kind of tells us if we hover over them what they are. So number 1 is P2 is player 1 name. Number 5 is lead name. And these are all boxes that we can shift around and even shift the size of. So they're just generic text boxes where what we put into them has appeared. All right. So some options that we have is we can add photos from our album. So let's say we want to add this logo specifically. A little large in there, but so we will just take it to the corner, reduce it down, and then our number 5 here, we will just modify the size of it. And now we have a set logo up in the top. And let's say we want to add some more text fields. And in this one, we just want to say, welcome to, and we will put this right above, for example, our event name. So we will apply the text change, and now we have our set box here. And it's a little hard to maneuver some of these, but always gotta try to grab the right one. All right. So let's set this. Sorry, these text boxes we can only select from one side. So, and now it's not letting me move it. Come on. There we go. Sorry. These things are, this is the one part of tournament management that's still a little iffy. It's a little hard to utilize. So now as you can see here, this is kind of small and not really how we want it. So what we need to do is actually edit that. So let me go back here. So I want to edit how this looks. So what I just did is I double click on the dotted box. Now what I want is this to, one, be centered in the square. We want, let's make the font Courier, but we want it nice and big. A little bit better, maybe a little better, and we'll bold that. So we'll apply those changes. I'm going to shift this up to the top and keep this one right underneath it. Now, if we want to know, let's say we want to match these two so they look similar, we can double click on here. And in here we can see, okay, so this is 24 font size, and we can even set it to Courier also and bold it. But even 24 looks a little small. Let's go 26. We'll apply that. We'll come back here, change this to 26. Now, one thing that you could probably see is that these boxes are getting a little small for it. And this one, where I had set text, it automatically increased the size of it. It did the same thing to here, so they actually kind of overlapped there for a little bit. So I had to readjust them. And we will just put a little spacing in here to keep them so they don't get clawed together. And now for player 1 and player 2's name, let's do the kind of little plain, just having it like it was. So let's change the text color. We'll have player 1 be in green, player 2 be in blue. We'll apply those changes. And for, let's get rid of this box down here so we can just select it and come on. Open up. Sorry. Some of these things just do not always cooperate. So we want to delete this item, so we have it highlighted. So we come over here to delete. So you can see some other options. We can add rectangles, add lines. So let's add a line in here, and what we'll do is we'll add a line, and there's our line up here, a little small. We will put it here and go all the way across, and let's say we want this to be a little thicker, but we want it solid. Alright. Now send it back, send it front. It allows you to have stuff overlapping and have one, like, So if we put this text in front of here, we could have the text in front, but the logo in the background. And we'll keep tea time and hold as the same, and we will save this. Alright, so now that we've finished that, we can come down here, and I should have labeled it differently. Let's do that now. Alright, so let's call this webinar cart sign, and save that. Okay, so now we have it. We're printing it by pairs for every 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. With cart signs, you can in events, you can also set people that are walking versus riding. So you also have the ability to set it to print cart signs for only riders, and so it doesn't have walkers on there as well. We're going to print this just so we can see how this came out. So one thing I want to tell you about these report composers is they do take time to play with. So if you're in a hurry or want to get something out quick, it's not really the time to work with these composers. They take time and a little practice to get used to. So please don't try to rush with them. So here, now we still have a pretty generic looking bottom half, but our top half is a little more unique. We got our logo, little break in the line, but this stuff down here is still kind of boring. So this is something that we could update and change even more based on what we want. Now, I'm running out of time here, but I want to quickly go to the report composer. Now, as you can see here, there's already a lot of reports built in here for specific needs that you might have. So an alpha T sheet for both rounds, or so like in this tournament we had 5 rounds. So we have a T sheet for all 5 rounds. So we don't have to create our own all the time. There are definitely, depending on how you like reports, there's definitely going to be ones that you might not find in here, but there are a lot of them. So try to look through here and just see if maybe you can find something that's up to what you'd like. But let's just take a quick look here. So let's say this copy of Alpha T Sheet 2. Going to edit this. And yes. Okay. So now this is a report, so we can design the report header or the column header, and then how we want it to print out. So for our report header, we hit design, and we can modify how the header looks. So this is what we'd be changing right here. So we hit cancel, go to our column headers, and this is the information here and there that we're modifying. And then as you can see below, this is the content that we have set in there. And we can't modify that right now because right now we're just playing with the headers. Let's say we want to design those. So now it'll switch to this, and we can actually differentiate what we want in these individual columns. So right now we have first name and last name, and so we can open this up, change so it just has last name. And let's say we want this a little bit bigger. We can change the font or size to 10. That's a little smaller. Let's try 14. And apply. And now it's a little bit bigger. We can even resize this. So what this allows us to do is resize the size of this column here. So if we want Parker Bell to be a little wider to make room for a larger text, we have that ability. We can even make it really large, but then obviously not many of these would fit on one page. As you saw in the page composer, this section here was kind of set, and that's because that was how much room it had to play with, to print on. And so it's going to keep that to certain reports will have that set, such as the column header. If we were to design this again, we can also increase the size of the header if we wanted to add more. But certain reports, like the cart sign, do have a set size just to make sure they can print the right number of them on a page for you. But let's look at the content real quick. So in each one of these, we also had the ability to type in information. So again, right now that this is asking for is a certain round and the tee time. So up here, we will see all the different things that we can type in. So let's say we want the fourth round and we want the index. We can add that over there. Or we can have on course information for their tee time, day of the week, courses that they're playing. All these different options here. And tournament related, rankings or how many points they've gotten over the past few days. And we can keep going. So there's a ton of information in here to create these special reports. It just takes time and a little bit of practice to do them how you want. Okay, so that covered just about everything I wanted to go through. I know the report stuff was a little rushed, so let's take any questions that we might have. And again, thank you everybody for coming to the webinar today. I hope this was informational for everybody and helps you keep going in your tournament management process.